and we did that for 7 or 8 years, didn't we? And it's very rewarding. It's, very damaged young people who, and it's quite harsh because what they're having to do is, because of the way the state system works, between leaving home, which is when they are, usually the trust takes them when they're 15 or 16.
Well, it was a mixture. Some of the kids were runaways or so alienated. There was one young lesbian who from an Asian background, and she was just so
bright, so bright.
Very, very bright, and we looked after her in the period between her A levels and going to university, because she wouldn't leave home until she'd actually finished her studies, and then she'd like find me somewhere to go. I can't stand it at home anyway. To the other one, Leon, who been climbing out of windows since he was 15 to get up to Soho and all that kind of stuff. So I said no wonder his mother, who actually sounded, we never met her, but she sounded like quite a decent person, but couldn't cope with this precocious behaviour, certainly not this precocious gay behaviour. But some of the other kids were in the care system, got into adolescence, were presenting as gay, and then the trust had picked them up by referral from the care agents
and the social services.
But some of them one was very, very damaged, wasn't he? That was awful.
He had come from the most terrifyingly awful circumstances. His father was a paedophile, but male to female. So he was having sex with his own daughter, allegedly. He had what happened was the police were called by neighbours to the house because they saw both children, the boy and the girl, standing on a table in the front window of the house naked, and they'd seen a known male-to-male paedophile go into the house. And when the police arrived, the known male paedophile was naked, standing naked in the hall, and the children were naked on the table. The father was upstairs asleep in bed and said he knew nothing about it. He didn't know what was going on. But what was interesting was that the social workers said that the father remarried, and his own sister said to him, "I'll come to the wedding if you promise not to have any children from the marriage." So that was his background. He'd actually been brought up to think that these sorts of adult to child relationships were normal, that they were about love. The young person, he couldn't understand that actually this was not normal behaviour, and that was something to get beyond. He was so damaged.
He was actually here he only lived here for about 3 weeks.
It took months.
But it was about a year.
The relationship,
was
the training,
about a year
placement.
Before he was placed, then the aftermath and going.
But it was like a hurricane running through the place. But he moved in within minutes, practically. His phone was being called because he had what had happened. He was in and out of secure units as his life went on as a young person, and he'd run away from one of them and been set up in a flat in Brighton at 14 as a prostitute, but couldn't take care of himself because he was a child, so he didn't know how to eat or cook food for himself. And I think he got scabies, didn't he? Somebody called social services because he couldn't look after himself, and he was getting sick. So somebody called social services, so he was rushed back into a secure unit. But those people, he then, within minutes, not minutes, but days of being here, he was back. The people were getting him to go into Soho, and he was taking out clothes to sell, to sort of sell or what have you. And it was just...
We ended up with police protection for a couple of months because of the people he was in contact with because of course got the phone off him a couple of times and had been, quite confrontational about leave this kid alone and all that kind of stuff. That was really unpleasant.
So that was the hardest one. And actually, I haven't done it, but I really want to talk to the social worker who placed him with us, because this is the awfulness of that sort of system. He had learning difficulties, serious learning difficulties. He was never ever going to be able to be independent. So he was going to be in a life of prostitution and drugs and whatever. That's what his destiny was, from the background that he came from and from the way he was in the world. He went off to Blackpool, and he was last seen collecting glasses in a gay club in Blackpool. And he'd got to an age, because I think he was over 16 by then, he'd got to an age where social services don't have a legal responsibility. So their concern is if they can't control or direct his behaviour, and he's going to do it anyway, they haven't got the resources to do it. So he's going to be left to his own devices, because from their point of view, he's beyond the system, he's beyond the care system. So there is a real need for sort of mentoring, caring, a sort of wider network of people to support young people as they're coming out who are gay or whatever challenging circumstances they might find themselves, so that if they're not with their families, because there's no wider network for them to actually lock into.
That was the most challenging one, though. But some of them were much more.
Mustafa was
much more benign than that.
It was absolutely charming.
Yeah.
So, and some of them went back to their parents. They had their time away, and then Mustafa did. He went back to be with his mum.
And he is South Asian. He's Asian.
No, he was Turkish as well.
He was Turkish as well, I think.
But you didn't do it anymore.
I think it was after
the last one we had
Nick came back.
Someone stayed with us for a year, and this was the one we were telling you about, who came up to Lauriston with us because we to do drag and all that kind of stuff. And that worked really, really well, but the placement broke down in the summer, so about a year in, when he wasn't going, college had stopped, and it was kind of like the usual teenage thing, really. It's like, will you get up and do something in the daytime? And
he's going to.
It's not acceptable at 17 or 16 to lie in bed all day and then go out all night, da 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 da. And then there was like a row, it's just like absolutely sort of bog standard family stuff. But he flounced off to live with his boyfriend for the summer.
And said he didn't want to come back.
So as far as the agents, as far as the trust were concerned, he's closed the placement. And if you do that, they then move you, because they're dealing with adolescents, so it's moving you.
They've got to get him to learn that he can't do this sort of stuff. But actually, he was a runaway. So I said that if he wanted to come back, because what happened was at the end of the summer, college was starting again, so he'd had his holiday. So he then said, "Can I go back now?" And we said, "Fine," because actually, this is quite good, because if he's a runaway and he had run away from his parents or his home, his mum, and didn't go back, if he actually gets to a point a few weeks later when he actually works out, I can actually go back and retrieve this. I saw that as a positive thing. But the trust rules are that once somebody's broken the placement in that way and said that they won't go back there and they want to move on, they've also, this is the care system again, they're moving him towards independence. He was 16 and by the time he's 18, he again had learning difficulties. So I'm concerned about just how independent someone is going to be able to be. But they moved him on to somewhere where he was just like a lodger. There was no support network in the household. He was going to have to look after himself and make decisions for himself, and he wasn't going to get any guidance, and he wasn't going to be able to be treated like the child in the family. He was actually going to have to be more independent. Because what would happen when he was 18 is they would find him a place, maybe in a shared household, where there was a carer who was looking after people with several people in the flat. So there might be 4 or 5 people all living in the same flat, and then they move towards getting their own place, hopefully, if they become more independent. So I'm not complaining about, not sort of criticising the trusts for what they thought, but I just thought, oh, give them a break, you know. It's like it wasn't that
Well, they just didn't
important.
want to do any work with us around any of that reconciliation stuff. It was like the relationship's over, and that just felt really.
And also,
and it needn't have been.
We
you
did
know.
fall out with them because I was annoyed with them that they were portraying his mother as being homophobic because she couldn't accept him being gay. And I said, but we need to do some work with her because this is his mother, and we actually need to do some bonding work to try to repair this relationship because he's got the rest of his life, you know. And her being upset that her child was getting out of bed and climbing down the drain pipe or whatever it was to go into London, to climb out of the window. He said he was climbing out of the window, whether it was on the ground floor, I don't know. But if that was happening, any parent would be concerned. And actually, one of the things we learned from it was that parents really do need to accept their child's sexuality. Because if they don't, then the child will just go off and do it anyway. And then the parents won't know. And the children and the young people could be in very dangerous situations, and the parents haven't got any clue of what's happening for them or how to support them. So the most sensible thing was it Leon's boyfriend, Paul, who came from West London.
Yeah.
He was about a year older. So Leon was about 16 or 17, and he was 18 or 19. And he met him in heaven, and they got together. His parents in West London, he said, I never came out because I've always been gay. So I've been out because this is the generations moving on. He'd always been out at school. He didn't need to come out as a gay man. And his parents encouraged him to bring his boyfriends home. So that's where Leon went for the summer, because we were giving him a hard time about getting up in the morning. So he thought, I'm going to go and stay with him because they don't give me a hard time about getting up in the morning. It was as simple as that. And Paul will come and stay here. So for about a year, that's how they lived. Mm-hmm. They apportioned it out so that the parents, you know, we in a parental role, and his parents, Paul's parents, shared the responsibility of looking after them in that way. So I thought that was, and they weren't the only ones. There was somebody else he met, that boy's parents, that young man's parents, were exactly the same. They wanted to meet the other people that he was seeing, which I thought was incredibly sensible, actually.
And tell me about your future now, the country place.
Well, touch wood. Not that I'm superstitious. Well, I'm now 60 and sort of moving towards retiring, although I think that with people living for longer and longer, it's not that I'm not intending not to work, but I just want to be more flexible about how I do work. So whether it's a 3-month contract or 2 or 3 days a week for so long or whatever. But we have horses, which is where all of this sort of stuff started, with doing the gay dressage stuff. And the horses are older. It's still the same horses. They're old. They're getting older too. And I want to go and enjoy them and have some time in the country. But also, it's just about, if I'm not working full time, it's very costly to keep the horses. It's very costly anyway. But if we're both working full time, then we have to keep them in that way, because it's just you can't. It's you know, we used to do it, but it's incredibly onerous to have to look after them in the evening and the morning, and then go to work and then go back and get everything ready for the next day. And it's a chore. It's not enjoyment. It's not. But so hopefully, and Richard walked to work for 10 years. His job is 10 minutes from where we live, and that's been a luxury. So I think that having driven to the horses for 10 years, it's now time for me to have the horses nearby and enjoy my retirement and recoup my investment.
Is that how you see it?
Yeah, pretty much.
All right then. I wish you the very best. Everything. I think
But we might be back within the year. We're keeping this place anyway, just in case we need a bolt hole, because it may work out. You know, the country may not be like living in London, because having lived here one of the things about this area is, because it's so diverse, it's actually very safe and we've had a very nice time here so there's no push factor. It's about other things that we would want to do. But if they don't work out, if we keep this place, we can always come back and have our little house again here.